Okay, we are live on Facebook, so we would now continue on Zoom. Okay, so good afternoon once again. Good afternoon, our panelists. Good afternoon, our participants. Before we go on, I'll quickly introduce our speakers for the day and our topic for the day. I'll post the profile of our speakers on the chat box, but before I do that, I would quickly introduce the topic. Today we'll be discussing law as a business, positioning for international business opportunities. Most times we lawyers look at law more like a profession, and we tend not to look at it as a business. So we need to look at it as purely as a business and look at ourselves as entrepreneurs and apply business skills in rendering services to our clients. So we're actually selling services. We're into the business of selling services, and we need to have the business mindset, the mindset of an entrepreneur, to be able to sell our services and be profitable in the law practice. So in the law business, as I would prefer to call it. So our speakers today will be telling us more about how we can position ourselves for international business opportunities. Most of us, our practice here in Nigeria are limited, our practice areas or are limited, and we really have a need to expand to other African countries and other Western countries as well. So we'll be hearing from our speakers who will be telling us more in this regard. And we'll also have the opportunity of asking questions at the right time. So I will introduce our speakers shortly. Scott Cowan is the Chief Executive Officer of Africa Legal. And also Tom Pearson is the Chief Commercial Officer of Africa Legal, and they've got a lot of experience, and they'll be telling us more about the topic. I'll post their full profile on the chat box so that we can read the details there. So, but that's just a brief introduction. Thank you and welcome our panelists, Scott Cowan and Thompson Pearson. Thanks for being here.
Absolute pleasure.
Absolute pleasure, Ifoma, and congratulations on a great series this week.
Yes, it's fine. Thank you for being here. So you have the floor now, and like we discussed, you can speak to the topic. If you also decide to share your slides, you're also free to do that. Then at the right time, we'll also be engaging you with some questions, and you'll be throwing more light on those areas. So we can start the session now with your presentation.
Perfect. So to let everyone know how we're going to run through things today, we do have a brief PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Iffy. Can you authorize that? I think I need your permission.
Okay, yes, you can share your screen. I enable screen sharing for panelists, so you're already enabled. Yes,
that's now live. So just to check that you can see that.
Yes, I can see that. I confirm that I can see the screen.
Perfect, perfect. So the way that we'll run, Scott is actually going to take one of the first parts of this discussion. I'm going to then lead on a couple of points. We are going to try and get through the presentation component as quickly and efficiently as we can, because I'm a big believer in questions adding the most value to these things. I think someone said they can't see us at the moment. We'll probably keep it that way until the Q&A session, so we can keep the focus on these slides rather than how wonderful Scott and I's home offices look at the moment. But we'll definitely let our faces be seen when we're doing the Q&A.
Yes, I think they want to see your faces.
Perfect.
See how handsome you are.
That's
so,
the one.
Okay, when you're done sharing the screen, you can.
Perfect. Well, there we go. There we go. So, as has been said, Scott and I are both from Africa Legal. Scott is the Chief Executive Officer. I am the Chief Commercial Officer. So just very quickly to say again, absolute pleasure to be here. It looks like the week has been a fantastic success so far. So
Yes.
well done to you, Ife, and well done to everyone for finding the time to join us. So Africa Legal, in a nutshell, we are here to provide content, career opportunities, and accessible learning solutions to make our communities, which you are a part of, better informed, better inspired, and better educated. And we strive to achieve our mission through the deployment of solutions aligned to three key pillars: content, careers, and learning. Now, if you aren't a regular visitor of Africa Legal, I encourage you to come join us, read our content, take our learning courses, and hopefully what we talk about today is going to set a little bit more of an appetite for you to come and see us. Very briefly, this is Scott and myself. I'm not going to dwell. It would be far too egotistical to talk too much about ourselves. So as Ivy said, we'll just post some further detail on our credentials, if you will, in the chat comments. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Scott, who is going to take the first 10 minutes or so of this. We're then going to run straight through into some additional slides I'm going to be talking to, and then we'll move into a combined Q&A at the end, just to make sure we have enough time. So Scott, I'll hand over to you, my good man.
Tom, great introduction, and a big thank you again to Ife for hosting us today on the last seminar, which I know has been a great success this week, and a welcome to everyone who is participating. As Tom said, Ife, look, in today's global legal markets, it's imperative that that lawyers at all levels have the ability to turn their legal minds to cross-border transactions and understand how to interact with the global legal markets. The days of working in law firms that concentrate just on local business are really becoming few and far between as the global business world becomes smaller through the international expansions of corporates and, of course, technology. Now, I was listening to the first episode this week in the series, and my very dear friend Chinyere was talking about the importance of personal branding. I couldn't agree more with her views on this, and especially as the legal markets become more and more competitive. People buy from people they trust, and they trust people they like. Now, developing your legal skills beyond the boundaries of your own country, and in this case, Nigeria, is and can be a really daunting task for people. But coming out of your comfort zone is something we all have to do and continue to strive to be the best versions we can of ourselves. So that kind of leads me in nicely to the first part. So why are developing international legal skills important in today's legal market? And just picking up on the first point, the demand from the clients. Now, clients' demands and expectations are increasingly putting pressure on law firms to find more cost-effective ways of delivering legal services. Now, this might be by using technology or by dividing up parts of a deal rather than simply passing the whole deal to one law firm with no visibility on actual cost. Lawyers with international experience typically get access to more work and can be more attractive to clients if they work with the client to ensure that they receive cost-efficient services that further business growth. Now, leading into that is quite nicely is an area that we are very passionate about, and it's a diversified skill set of the modern lawyer. Now, in these really uncertain times we find ourselves in, we will see some areas of the law becoming slower, perhaps stagnant for a period of time as we transit through this COVID-19 epidemic. Therefore, we must, and I emphasize must, look at ways of upskilling those lawyers into other practice areas and making sure that their skills are relevant to the evolving markets. Even when the world returns back onto its axis that it's been slightly knocked off at the moment and moves on, we are unlikely to return to the old normal. Now, I've seen so many lawyers and law firms make the very big mistake of redundancies and cutting certain practice areas in desperate times, and how much of a negative impact that can have on your business. Now, I'm sorry to say, but I do remember back to the 90s, and giving away my age, but international law firms were the main culprits back then. And of recent, to the younger audience out there, 2008, all to protect the partners' profits at the expense of the young lawyers, which is just not acceptable. Now, we are passionate about not seeing this happen in Africa, and making sure that every lawyer, no matter how junior or senior, has the ability to turn their exceptional legal skills to a multitude of specializations, therefore increasing their personal brand, as Chinyere mentioned at the beginning of this week, and ultimately making them indispensable to their law firms, and perhaps very attractive to the international law firms, as was the case with my very, very dear friend Kayode Oladipo, who is climbing the ranks of Clifford Chance, a magic circle law firm in London, and is now practicing as a senior associate, having come from Lagos. With all this in mind, I can hear many of the audience saying, okay, Scott, how do we access this training in the current markets, and how we may find ourselves in what areas of law should I be make myself indispensable? Well, Ife, given the fact that we find ourselves increasingly dependent on technology and using technology to connect virtually, like we are today on Zoom and Facebook, I would focus on business skills. Think as a business person rather than as a lawyer, as you made properly clear at the beginning of this introduction today. Cross-border corporate governance, information governance, environmental governance, and ethics is a good place to start. Now, understanding the basics in these three fields of law will give you a head start on your peers, and being able to apply the principles of law and good business to these areas as Africa also enters the CFTA coming into effect in July, albeit there will be many discussions to be had around that, will really help in the internationalization of African lawyers, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent. Now, for us, Africa Legal is deploying learning on all these topics in partnership with the University of Cape Town in the coming months, that all carry a certification of completion, something for the CV, I expect, for many people, and more importantly, some real practical takeaways that can apply to your desk immediately that can make a difference. So leading into this, the building your network, again, so important for lawyers of all seniority to have an incredibly robust network. Community is crucial to all of us in both our professional and personal lives. Now, as we develop our knowledge and become more aware of international deals, lawyers, and developments, building a network outside your immediate legal circle will help massively. Being able to interact with and talk with lawyers, not just in Nigeria, but in South Africa, Uganda, Rwanda, Ghana, Kenya, will add to all those who wish to go beyond their boundaries and internationalize themselves. This is why my co-founder, Wendy Bampton, and I started on this journey such a long time ago to bring this together to a truly Pan-African legal community where everyone can access articles such as senior lawyers, series on women in law, young lawyers, up and coming lawyers, certain specializations, and recent developments, along with, obviously, as Tom mentioned, jobs and the training that we're talking about, all in one place. Now, Ife, that community is so loyal to Africa Legal, and it stands at over 180,000 already and growing, but not just across the African continent. That's the important part here, but globally, giving every lawyer and law firm in Africa a voice and an ability to showcase the incredible talent that is within the legal profession on the continent. Now, in short, lawyers are trying to win more work, and you must be prepared to go out of your comfort zone and time zone to give yourself the best possible chance in increasingly digital global market. Tom.
Scott, wonderful stuff. Thanks very much for that outline. Now, everyone, I'd ask that you scribble down any questions you have specifically for Scott around his conversation points for the end of this presentation, which shouldn't go on for more than another 20 minutes or so, so it will give us plenty of time. Now, I'm going to dive into some specifics on positioning for international business opportunities. Now, let's start with the why. Why should we be looking outside of our towns, our cities, our villages, if you will, and looking at more global opportunities? Now, a major reason why law firms do this is to diversify and expand revenues and clients. That's a pretty obvious one. There's also to service client demand. You know, clients aren't stagnant. They tend to move much quicker than law firms themselves. They will be opening offices. They will be hiring abroad. They will be looking at cross-border supply chains. As they grow and as they develop, we as lawyers need to be developing with them. A small part that does need to be considered is the prestige. Now, I ummed and ahed about whether including the prestige point, because this is actually a slightly egotistical approach, which many of the international law firms fell foul of previously. There have been many rushes to the Middle East, for example, and there have been a few rushes into African markets simply for prestige from the international players, and it has bitten them on the behind on more than one occasion. So I do say that prestige is all well and good and it can bring business, but it's probably the riskiest of the 6 points that I put as to why expand internationally here. So something to bear in mind. Now, a very important point is international diversification can allow us to spread economic, societal, and political risk. You know, we all engage with pretty volatile countries across the continent every now and again, and we can actually offset the risk of governance change, societal issues such as what we're experiencing globally through COVID, and economic risks by diversifying our presence and our revenue streams across multiple jurisdictions. Competition is another reason. Two kind of approaches here. There's both competition locally, which is driving us to find work in alternative markets, and there's also the fact that we have to keep up with the competition, whether that be other local law firms, other African law firms, or international players. We always need to be looking to compete on as many platforms as we can. The final reason that I've listed, and this is not an exhaustive list, I'm sure that you all have many that you would add, and I'd love to hear them at the end of this presentation, is talent, the search for talent. Can we find every brain we need on our doorstep? No, we need to look further afield sometimes, even abroad sometimes. Luckily, we have the tools and the technology in front of us to do so in a much easier way than we used to. So that goes back to Scott's point about building your network. You can do it from the comfort of your own desk as long as you have a nice chair. Finding people across the world that share your passion, your understandings, and can help fill gaps in your knowledge. This is another reason why we may well want to position ourselves for international business opportunities. Now, a very important point here is this is no easy street. I know that the idea of grabbing that big American client or that untapped startup that's about to revolutionize the world and they happen to be in a foreign market is very attractive, and it can look like the golden goose. It can be, but what I want to really put forward in today's presentation is it needs to be part of your overall strategy, not the total of it. International expansion comes with significant risk. It comes with increased capital overheads. It comes with potential need to understand new regulatory environments, new legislation, dealing with new clients, all of which can take a lot of time and money without necessarily delivering the returns that are commensurate with the amount of effort you put in. So this isn't to put anyone off. We all need to be looking to position ourselves into foreign markets and global opportunities, but don't think that this is the golden ticket. Don't think that this is easy street, but it is a street we need to walk down. So let's look at an interesting consideration on what international expansion really means. Does it mean London, New York, Rio, Chicago, Sydney? Or does it mean one state over in Nigeria? Does it mean other African countries? It's something that I want you all to give a lot of thought to, because to my mind, the opportunities on our proverbial doorstep in other African countries is actually potentially more appealing and more accessible than those of the larger, more established legal markets. And there's a couple of reasons I've jotted down here as to why that might be the case. Let's look at New York, but this is interchangeable for any major, typically Western legal market. Extremely lucrative opportunities, huge legal spend, a large number of prestigious businesses that you could secure, and a highly developed market. But it is rabidly competitive. You've got to look at the fact that many US law firms are struggling at the moment, and compare their ability and the length of time they've had in that market to our own as external non-US law firms, and ask your question, why? If they are struggling, why would we not? Now, that is never to say it's not worth pursuing those opportunities, but we need to look at the low-hanging fruit. We need to look at things we can realistically achieve and then develop, rather than looking for the one-stop solution that is going to put us on the global map as lawyers. Other issues you've got to consider is the high startup and access costs to markets such as New York and London, time zone and travel impediments, and also regulatory hurdles. But let's switch. Let's have a look at Nairobi, and it could be any other major business conduit on the continent. It potentially is more accessible, and it should be even more so with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement coming in, with free movements of goods, persons, and services. You've got time zone considerations, not across the whole continent. I do appreciate that. We've got 4 hours either way. Collaborative attitude is an interesting one here. I do come across London lawyers, New York lawyers on a daily basis who are very collaborative, friendly, and encouraging. But I must say, I come across a greater abundance of African lawyers who have that attitude to collaborate, to share, to really grow as a community. And that can be something that makes our transition and access into foreign markets a lot easier, which is leading into that second group, peer group. These are fellow Africans looking after each other and building up as a community without a reliance on a London lawyer, a New York lawyer, all those markets. This is something that should be front of mind in thinking how to develop and how to grow internationally. Potentially, there's also a lower cost of access, but yes, there are some negatives. We do need to look at the realities that there is potentially a lower average client spend. There are fewer larger multinational businesses, but all in all, something to consider. And that's all I want to do here today, is evoke some thought. And this is all, it can be applicable, but it's going to be very dependent on your own circumstances, the size of the firm, your specialism, and so on. So all of this is as informative as I can make it, but don't think it's gospel when it comes to your individual circumstance. Now on to focus. Very important component here to consider in developing an international practice. Now, I'll jump to my second bullet point here, which is full service is unlikely to yield your first break into new markets in isolation. There is still a propensity for Nigerian law firms of any size to brand themselves as full service. Now, if we're truly honest with ourselves, yes, we could probably muddle through in giving legal advice on a real range of issues that come to us. But if we're being truly honest, we're not full service in many cases. But that is no bad thing, especially when it comes to international markets and work. Because you are not going to be picked up by an international law firm with referral work or by a multinational client looking at Nigerian legal expertise, or East African, West African, wherever it needs to be, because you're branded as full service. They're going to be looking for a very specific skill set, and they're going to need that skill set to deal with a very specific problem. So you can see there can be a disconnect between branding ourselves as full service and what is actually needed to take that first step on either a client-driven or a referral-driven international engagement and expansion. So when we're thinking about what specialisms could be most attractive to that international client or international law firm, some examples would be IP, incredibly important globally and locally, M&A, investigations, corporate governance, sector-based, in particular around mining, renewables, FMCG, which is fast-moving consumer goods, banking, and fintech, which is very, very popular and growing in a number of African countries. So something to bear in mind there. Look at highly transferable skills that aren't tied to a specific regulatory or legislative regime. This is what's going to position you to be able to advise on a greater number of issues rather than just servicing the local issues for local clients, which you've been doing up until now. Focus on solving problems using these specialisms locally before thinking internationally. You know, I said full service isn't going to get the door open, but neither's a specialism without evidence. So apply it. Start building your own niche, your own real specialism, which does have that international relevance down the line, but use it to solve the problems of a client one state over or a neighboring jurisdiction. Look for those examples, hunt them down vigorously, because it's those examples that are going to set you in good stead for larger or more international opportunities. And record them. Case studies, testimonials, evidence that you've been doing the kind of work that could well slot into that jigsaw puzzle, a large piece of international work further down the line. Clients, vast majority of international development will be led by clients, and that's for good reason. They pay our bills. Money and revenues are always going to be front and center when it comes to reasons for international development. It gives us that safety net and that guidance not to overreach. So I implore everyone who's listening today to always be thinking about how you can reliably drive revenues from international expansion rather than just the prestige or being able to do it for the sake of it. Look at the costs associated with doing it in return for those revenues. Make sure that you're not going to be losing out or making too little money to justify continued expansion further down the line, okay? So when you're following clients, however, rather than trying to go alone, it can offer a greater degree of security and business investment. This is a client who's saying, I intend to expand into X, Y, and Z. So you're following in that wake rather than trying to trailblaze yourself. You know, if you have assurance that this is a long-term client with a viable business model who is expanding internationally, this is someone that you want to get aligned with, and you can probably do so safely. If this is a fly-by-night, only ever calls you when he's had a drink, telling you that he's suddenly going to open in Ghana tomorrow and Ethiopia the week after that. Again, it's an extreme example, but probably not the kind of client that you want to follow into international markets. So something to bear in mind, not all clients were born equal, especially when it comes to their international expansion plans. So my fourth point here is look at work that can provide long-term security for you as an organization. Past the initial work that you're due to undertake, I don't know, a regulatory review, a corporate governance review to make sure they're not going to get a regulator annoyed at them as they move into a new jurisdiction. That's a great piece of work initially, but where can it lead? Because one piece of international work does not make an international practice. So always be thinking about what you can do to build on that initial work and take the next step on to make sure you're not caught high and dry further down the line when you've done all of this international work, but it's not actually led anywhere, okay? Another point here is under promise and over deliver. business and legal advice, this is very true too. So growth is a perfect opportunity to establish a unique selling point, but make sure that in establishing that unique selling point, you're not self-aggrandizing. You know, this is, you need to be, if your client's just starting on their international journey, make them know that you are starting, but you are starting with them. Don't try and pretend that you've already done something. Don't try and big up the fact that you did bordering state work and turn that into international work. Honesty and upfrontness is always going to serve you better in the long run than any kind of bravado. Okay, opportunities at your fingertips, stuff that we all like. You know, this is stuff that you can start on today. Important point here, I've written team as the first point, but this also applies to network. You know, who do you know? What have they done? Where have they studied? Who do they know? Have a bit of an audit of your international contacts. You know, look at LinkedIn. Who is it that you truly know and engage with that could be not that first instantaneous piece of work, but could start opening doors for you? This is a step-by-step process. Who could you ask questions of? Who could you know, have a mentor-mentee relationship with? Just the who is a very important point here, okay? Awareness is something else that we can very much pursue on our own right, just with a laptop and a good internet connection and an incredibly good start. You know, Africa Legal has a role to play here ourselves. We do try and bring the right news, the right insight, regardless of jurisdiction, to our African audiences. So read us, read the global media. Utilize resources such as Crunchbase, fantastic tool. What this does is actually allow you to map and research startups and developing scale-up businesses as they're taking on board investment. So if you're seeing a sudden slew of early stage investment into fintech in your local jurisdiction, for example, it'll be able to tell you which of those organizations are actually getting that cash. And that should be a key target for you. If there is a growth opportunity, Crunchbase is a really good chance for you to research with that in a bit more detail. And the private equity point, the FDI point, the panel reviews, all of this is there. It just takes a little bit of digging, and it can be a great bit of guidance in where we direct our attention for that low-hanging fruit I talked about a while back when it comes to our first step into international markets. Content. This is a two-way street. I'd love to see you all writing more content as well as consuming more content. There are a variety of entirely free routes to do that. LinkedIn, blog, present an international mindset as you do this. So say you've worked on a piece of advice. Why not speculatively say what you would do differently if that advice had been given to a client in a different jurisdiction? You know, just take those baby steps to start identifying yourself as someone with that right mindset and the developing skill set to, in the future, be someone who is very, very well placed to be an advisor on international legal matters. Okay, events, a great example. We are currently enjoying a virtual event ourselves. When you do them, look for the right international audiences. Look for audiences of high growth businesses, startup events, and communities that encourage these kinds of demographics as well. So you can be well placed into the kind of ecosystems that can offer you those first opportunities to advise on a startup taking its next step, or an international business looking to grow and develop in African markets. And it seamlessly moves into the collaboration point. Look around you. Look at everyone on this call, for example. Look at the fantastic network that IFI's been building with the Legal Business Network. This is a great group. It's a great energized brain trust of young, passionate lawyers in Nigeria, okay? You're gonna have ideas, you're gonna have contacts, and you know, the collective power of these kinds of audiences absolutely eclipse what one can do on their own. So I really encourage you all to collaborate, learn from each other, whether it be local firms, international firms, host your own events, host podcasts, host content. Just start on that journey towards positioning yourselves as someone who's internationally minded and as a collective, as well as an individual, okay? So walk before you run. Let me just go back there, guys. So this chap looks like he may well have run before he walked. A collaboration point here is very important. Look at both local and international firms and clients when it comes to opportunities to collaborate. So that is the events I've mentioned, the content I've mentioned, and be bold in your outreach. You know, if there are certain international law firms, for example, that you really do aspire to work within or with, reach out to some of those partners. The contact details are online. They're always writing things. Comment on their articles, send them an email, tell them about why you're so interested in those topics. They're not demigods. They're simple people, and the vast majority of them will be engaging. If they can't because they're too busy, that is just something we deal with on the day-to-day basis. But ask questions, reach out, and I think you'll be surprised at the number that do respond in a kind and considered and beneficial way. And for those that don't, they're probably not the kind of people that you'd want to work with anyway. So no problem there. Networks, when it comes to growth as a firm, they are a mixed bag. All I say here is do your research. You know, a lot of these are a paid upfront model with promises of international referral networks and access to European markets and so on and so on. Some are very good, some are not very good. Just take a step, do your research, ask the right questions before you embark on that. If there are opportunities that look like they require capital expenditure up front to access international opportunities, scrutinize it. Just take some time, because cash is precious, and at the moment it's more precious than ever. So don't think that there's a way to buy your way into international markets. Be very, very careful if that looks like an appealing prospect, okay? Tech and analysis, this is simple. I don't know how many various sizes of law firms are on this call now, sole practitioners, 2 partners, 3 partners, 10 partners, you know, a mixed bag. But look at how you currently store and analyze your existing customer data, okay? Who do you really know? Do you know what you know? There might be a couple of little golden eggs hidden in there. People that are on the cusp of international expansion that you haven't talked to for a while. Think back to those customers that you did work for way back when. Have they grown? Have they developed? Are they about to make that next step into international markets that you could be the legal advisor for? Okay, so tech can be a great way at doing this. Excel spreadsheets at the very worst, but have a look at some free available CRM systems, which is customer relationship management systems. Okay, Salesforce is the most well-known one. There are other ones that are specialized for the legal industry. There are ones that you can be kind of bootstrapped into working for law firms that are freely available online. I think HubSpot is a good example. But have a look. If you've already got one, great. Have an analyze. Who have you talked to? Who could be an international client? If you don't have one, do a bit of research, okay? Next point aligns with that capital expenditure point I've already made, is have a plan. Have a plan. You know, hopefully what I've talked about today can give you the inclination to either start on a plan or develop a plan. And again, avoid onerous capital expenditure. You shouldn't have to be spending that much money at the start of your international journey, okay? So be careful opportunities that look like you might have to. And as I've already said, leverage technology above physical presence. You know, one of the major reasons the law firms I talked about earlier who went for the prestige expansion rather than sensible expansion, it was a real estate costs that really did rear their ugly head and bite them on the behind when it comes to those kinds of expansion. So look, technologies really come to the forefront during the COVID pandemic. So just have a look at how that can be utilized in starting on and developing and actually maintaining an international presence rather than a physical presence. And real estate is one example here, but airfares and your own physical presence is another. Okay, if you really need to be somewhere, be there. But that isn't as often as we think. So have a look at technology. You can talk to clients anywhere in the world with a press of a button now. Do you really need to be flying there to get as much benefit as a decent web conversation? Okay. So in summary, international does not necessarily mean outside of Africa. Have a look at our doorstep before we think about New York and London. Focus on developing and marketing a relevant specialism. Clients can lead your charge into international markets, but be careful. And there are solutions freely and easily available to start on your journey. And don't rush. Foreign markets are not a golden goose. They are there to be developed, not rushed into. And very importantly, be positive, be proactive, and be yourself. As Scott said in his opening words to us all, people do still buy people. They see through self-aggrandizement, ego very quickly. And it'll be your own personality paired with your legal and business expertise, not in isolation, that mean it's the kind of international clients that want to work with you, and in the long term, not just the short. So be positive, be proactive, and be yourself. So Iffy, that's me done. So I've got a giant question mark, which I hope is indicative of our willingness to answer some. You're just on mute.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for that great presentation. Just straight to the point, but loaded with so much lessons. Thank you so much. And also thank you, Scott. So we'll be taking some questions now. And I think I saw one question in the question Q&A area. I don't know whether you've seen it, Scott and Tom. Someone said, I did not quite get what Scott said about the new international trend that would occur sometime in July this year. I would appreciate a bit more detail on this development. Perhaps Scott can throw more light on that then. And I enjoy, yes.
Iffy, hi. I actually responded in the thread to Rumi. I've actually sent her a link, and I was referring to the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which comes into effect on the 1st of July this year.
I think I've seen it now. You answered. I think I've seen. I think you said hi, Rumi. I was about leaning towards the the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Okay, I see it now. I see it now. So
Should we go onto video? I'll
Yes, I think
for
yes.
the Q&A.
You can switch to video now since we are done with slide sharing, and we can go on to.
So I bothered to cut my hair, you know.
Doesn't matter. I think the participants also want to see your face. Someone was saying, I didn't. We can't see the presenters, the speakers. I think they will also like to see your face. So that's fine. So I think then I said I was going to send the profile, a short profile of the speakers on the, I think I'll just done that now. So maybe. Okay, so I just posted the profile for those who wanted to know more. So you can just read a brief profile of Scott and Tom, and you can also check them up on LinkedIn. They are quite very active on LinkedIn. So let's just also go into the Q&A area again. There's another question. How effective is writing of research papers on developing a niche in an international market? I know Tom talked about building a niche, and you really emphasized that. So, and someone is talking about the effectiveness of research in respect of building a niche. Maybe just look into the Q&A area.
Yeah, no, I've got that. I'm more than happy to speak to that. If it's just a quick point, it's still telling me I'm not allowed to start my video because the host has stopped it.
That you're not allowed to, sorry?
It says I'm not allowed to start my video because the host has stopped it. So if you're able to fix that, fine. But if not, I'll dive into this question. So research papers, very good point. I would say it really depends on where it is promoted. You know, it's all well and good if we sit down and write our 4,000 words with a highly legal technical analysis of a certain problem. But where is that actually going to be picked up? You know, if it's purely going to be circulated in academic communities, is that actually going to be put in front of the kinds of law firms or clients that could instruct us on international matters? I would caution to say no, but there is no reason you couldn't edit your longer form research papers into something shorter, more snappy, more business minded, more commercial, which is then going to be picked up more easily and quickly through normal content channels like LinkedIn, like even Africa Legal, like Facebook, you know, other local legal press, like the Legal Business Network, and so on. So in and of itself, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Do it. You know, all lawyers tend to do it. But just look at how you can tweak it, shorten it, and make it more commercial, encouraging that to be presented and read by communities more likely to lead to international expansion rather than just being circulated round and round in academic circles. So does that help?
I think that clarifies the point. I think that clarifies the point. So I'll go into some other questions now in the Q&A. There's a question here about, someone said, I want you to speak more on the international law firms driven areas of law. Maybe just look into that question and let's hear your views on that. So you want some clarifications. We want you to talk about international law firms driven areas of law. Maybe you could just give some insights.
Look, I mean, I'm gonna kind of guess where that question is leading, on which practice areas are international law firms utilizing most in their international expansion efforts. Again, a caveat on top of this, it really does depend on a firm by firm basis. You know, you've got Clyde & Co, for example, who will always be an insurance focused law firm, and that's where their international offices also align their engagement. You've got Holman Fenwick Whelan, who will be a shipping firm. Clyde & Co, yes, slightly more diversified, but it's finance, it's banking, it's M&A, it's private equity. DLA Piper, for example, even more diversified, especially with their local African network firms. Mining is definitely on the agenda for those guys in development. Energy, renewables, infrastructure, all very good things to be looking into and focusing. FinTech in particular. Look at ones that get away from the technical, you know, legal frameworks on these things. Look at the business and look at the commercial side. So when you're thinking about how you could position yourselves as an M&A international advisor, don't think that writing about and presenting really technical analysis, I don't know, the Local Companies Act is necessarily going to be most helpful. Why not look at generalist trends? Why not look at where the cash to support M&A is coming from? Which banks seem to be most active? You know, that'll give you something very interesting to talk about, and also potentially some low-hanging fruit clients to go knock on their door if it's local investment institutions, for example, who are supporting local M&A. So you know, it's a wide question. It really does depend on the individual law firm, but you know, IP, infrastructure, banking, M&A, and so on would be good places to start.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Tom, we talked about it. You said so much about niching down, building a niche, and you also made comments about being specialization and talking about full service as sort of its advantage for international recognition or getting more international clients. Can you please throw more light on that? Are you saying that full service law firms may not be able to get more international opportunities than law firms who have niched down to a particular area of specialization?
So it's a great point of clarification. Where I wanted to focus on the specialism was very much on those starting their journey to international markets. You know, there are certain Nigerian law firms, for example, who are large enough, you know, the Templars of this world, the Oya bodies and so on, who, yes, they are full service, and yes, they're doing international work. But where did they start? You know, where did that first piece of international work come from? I would argue that it didn't come from someone going, well, that's a full service Nigerian law firm, we simply must work with them. It would have come from an individual, and this is speculating, but it's you know, my experience. It would have come from an individual client of an international company looking for a specialist piece of skill they needed in their African and Nigerian expansion that brings that firm initially to the attention of international law firms and international clients. So I'm not saying that full service is bad. I'm just saying when we're starting on our journey, it's far more likely that it will be a niche specialism that gets our foot in that door rather than constantly banging on about how we're full service. Does that make more sense?
Yes, it does. I think it's better clarified now, at least to be recognized as a specialist in an area. Let's say you're interested in intellectual property, for instance, and you brand yourself and build yourself to become an international intellectual property expert. So in that way, you position yourself better. Then you can expand into some other areas, maybe as time goes on. I think,
and even more detailed. What if you're a IP specialist in the Nigerian music industry, or fashion, or technology? You know, it's really looking at, you know, not to an absolute minute degree, but it's specialisms within specialisms that really can present you as a unique local legal advisor, rather than just one in a mixed bag.
Okay, I think that's fine. And it helps to bring one out, it helps to position one for such opportunities than when you are just everywhere. That's fine. Like you even pointed out now, and an IP specialist in the entertainment industry now recognized in Nigeria and also abroad. You are in a better position to get more recognition and even more briefs when people are looking for people. Let's say an IT specialist in entertainment industry, having positioned yourself in that area, you'll be able to attract more attention and possibly get briefs when such opportunities showcase themselves. That's interesting. That's interesting. I think I will also look into the Q&A area to see if there are more questions.
If there's a question there from Prince, in relation to networks and strategic alliances and best friend firms. First and foremost, Prince, I hope you're well. Please pass on my regards to Paul, who I think has done a fantastic job as president of the Nigerian Bar Association this year. It's lovely to have your questions. I'd like to pick up on this point. Tom, maybe you can come in with me on it. There are so many strategic alliances across the continent for various reasons. I'm a firm believer that actually the businesses, the law firms on the continent, and Prince, let's use your firm at the moment, is sufficiently big enough to actually start looking at the alliances. You've got things like the Africa Legal Network, which is based out of originally by Anjuwala and Kano in Kenya. And I think, Tom, it might have 16 or 17 members now, maybe 18 across the continent. That works very well. You've got the, Tom, what were the ones that we mentioned before? We got Lex Africa.
Lux Mundi, TLA, there's a very long list now.
Yeah, so my point with this, Prince, there's no right or wrong way. I think what you have to do is, if you're looking at a partnership or alliances with international law firms, whether they be in the UK, Europe, US, wherever, depending on what other skills you want to bring, they have to fit into your business. And one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen on this journey is law firms effectively forming partnerships because everyone else is forming partnerships with them or jumping into an alliance. I think that model, as much as it's seen as strength in numbers, I feel that actually it can also have a downside where you're actually restricted by the governance of such a network. So I think there's going to be a change. And I think there's going to be a swing more towards not some formal agreements in place, but more for informal agreements. Because as Tom said earlier, there are so many law firms across the continent who are beginning to lose bright specialist lawyers who are setting up their own law firms, like Tom mentioned, music, fashion, sport. And I think you have to be aware that actually those law firms, as big or small as they may be, they present opportunities. So I think it goes back to what I said, Prince, at the beginning about the community and building that community. You will find, people buy off people, people they respect and trust. And it's quite a simple formula. I think you have to really look deep into what are you going to get out of that network. Is it strength in numbers? Is it just because you want to be part of it? Because perhaps, tempers are part of something else. I don't know. But I would say look into it, do your homework, and then think about, is it right for us as a law firm? And I think, as I'm still on you, Prince, at the moment, there's another question, Iffy, that came up here from Prince in relation to what effect the COVID-19 is going to have on the commencement date in July of the African Free Trade Continental Agreement. Prince, again, I think we're in uncharted waters at the moment. I do think, and we can certainly mention that from Brexit at this end, I think the date will stand. I do think there's got a lot, as I said in the beginning of my presentation, there's a lot of negotiations to be had for cross-border movement of both personnel and trade. I think it probably wouldn't move as quick as one would hope, because again, I think the cross-fertilization of talent across the continent is just a wonderful thing, as long as everyone gets it right. So yes, I do think COVID is going to affect it. It just will slow it down. It won't stop it, I believe. I hope that answers both your questions, Prince.
Okay, thank you, Scott, for throwing more light on that and for giving insights in respect of the question asked by Prince. I think there's also another question here by God's Will. Do you have a mentorship or internship session for aspiring young lawyers? Maybe in answering this question, you tell us more about Africa Legal and some of the activities you engage in that can help Nigerian lawyers.
Tom, shall I pass that, Tom?
Oh, I think that's all you, Scott.
Africa, okay. Let me talk about the passion of Africa Legal. Our passion is bringing together a truly pan-African legal community. And there are so many things that we offer and will be offering, with some incredibly exciting news over the next month or so in terms of partnerships and developments. And it is something that we're very passionate about. The Nigerian market for us is an incredibly, 30% of our 180,000 community are Nigerian. And, personally, I would like to thank each and every one for supporting Africa Legal. And in that response, Africa Legal is here to facilitate training, to give you more information, and to help you be the best version you can be, because I'm truly passionate about the legal skills in Nigeria. I have met so many people. When Wendy and I attended the SBL 2 years ago in Abuja, I was absolutely overwhelmed by the reception that we received in Abuja by the young lawyers. And that kind of moved me to be keen and to be determined to make sure that actually Africa Legal is here to assist everyone, no matter what level. So yeah, there's a lot coming, a lot of training. All can be done online, certified and accredited. And I would say watch this space.
Okay, thank you, Scott. With particular reference to the question asked by God's Will, do you have internship sessions or opportunities for online internship or mentorship for aspiring young lawyers as part of your activities, the activities of Africa Legal? Do you offer a mentorship or internship?
So I'll jump in on that one. Currently, not in the way that you would think of a mentor program. What we're trying to do is actually embed mentoring and, more importantly, coaching into our digital learning streams. So we know how much time it takes to actually operate a one-to-one mentor-mentee program. What we're trying to do is impart as much relevant coaching and guidance information in one go through the power of technology, and that is through our digital learning products. When it comes to mentoring, this is something that I do want to touch on. There is nothing stopping young, hungry Nigerian lawyers from operating mentoring on a number of different levels in a number of different ways. If there are individuals who inspire you and you want to reach out to them. Reach out to them on social, reach out to them formally in email, whether they're in Nigeria or abroad. It's what I said during my presentation. Ask questions, be engaging, and you'll be surprised at the positive response you get back. Looking for the golden ticket on a formalized mentoring program, that may never materialize, but you can do it on your own volition and on your own back. So we are going to be looking at the power of technology to impart the right information in the right way at the right time through the Africa Legal digital learning and ongoing content efforts. But don't let anything stop you from trying to find your own mentors and asking the questions you need answers to now, because that is at your fingertips, and I really encourage you to do so. Iffy, you're just muted.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Thank you very much, Tom, for that clarifications. Okay, while we look into the Q&A area to see if there are other questions. I think there's a new question. At what stage, or better still, how many years of practice locally can a law firm be before they can think of themselves as being ripe to go international?
So look, it's a really good question, and I'm going to again I'll refer back to some of the slides when I went. There is no magic number. There is no, high five, guys, we finally made it to X number of partners, X number of clients, X number of revenues that then makes you ripe for international expansion, because international expansion comes in a innumerable number of ways. It could be a tiny piece of a small deal with a Swiss client. It could be a massive French-sponsored oil and gas program in Ethiopia with Nigerian investors. The point is it's a huge scale. So when is a firm ripe for international expansion? Well, whenever you feel like you can give the right advice for a problem that comes up. What that problem might be could be anything from big to small to local to international, okay? So if you've got the right skill set and the right contacts and the right attitude, it's there to be done at any time. Don't feel like arbitrary things like year call has anything to do with it. There may well be a point where your year call matches with the amount of accumulated information that makes you able to advise, but that might not be the case. Okay, so as soon as you have in yourself or in your firm access to the right skills and information to advise properly on international work, you're ready. Don't delay in doing some of the proactive things we've talked about in today's session just because you feel like you haven't got some tick boxes completed, years call, number of associates, and so on and so forth, okay? The opportunities are there now.
Okay, thank you, Tom, for giving that insight. I think that's the last question there. Let me still check thoroughly to see if there are more questions. Otherwise, we might just do a summary. I think that's the last question there. So I think before we summarize, you have actually said a whole lot in the slides and given some key points, about the opportunities that are in the international market. And you made mention of research and trying to build oneself and personal development and all that. So in Africa Legal, are there ways you encourage this personal development? You are talking about trainings. How do you go about your training? Is it online or physical events? Are there some locations that you fix for these trainings, or how do you just go about it? And how can people participate in trying to build themselves to actually position themselves for these opportunities?
Iffy, we believe in the power of technology to enable us to reach the masses as opposed to individuals. That said, obviously we find ourselves in incredibly difficult times where the majority of people are still in lockdown of some sort. Therefore, there is more of a need now than ever to continue one's personal development, and by using technology. Now, let me just go back a little bit and give you an idea. We when we formed Africa Legal, we had this in mind, was always for us to make education, continuous professional development, accessible to everybody. Okay. So let me give you, for instance, we did a pilot course on the modern corporate governance for the modern African lawyer with the University of Cape Town, and we Pan-Africanized it. So we had Reginald Aziza on there from a Nigerian perspective, who's a dear friend of ours, and we have it was a 2-hour session. It can be taken anytime. It can be taken now, anytime. Just go to Africa Legal, go to courses, sign up, and pay for it. And you will receive a certificate from University of Cape Town on completion as well. So the idea was for us to actually move away from the academics of law, but become more aligned to actually, if I'm a lawyer sat in Abuja today and I did that corporate governance course, how can I apply some of the takeaways to my desk in the afternoon? And that was a great success. The Nigerian Stock Exchange took it. Standard Bank took it down in Johannesburg, put all of their corporate governance team through it. And it was a resounding, resounding success. On the back of that, we're entering into a 2-year deal with them. And I will say some others coming, where with the University of Cape Town, where we're deploying more training, and very much based on a Pan-African experience. And I am so passionate that actually everyone has to look outside their own borders. And as I said right at the beginning in my little bit at the beginning, I firmly believe that having a Pan-African experience will make the lawyers of tomorrow incredibly in demand. And I really, truly believe that. And as such, so it can be, you can do it anytime. You can do it on your mobile. There are takeaways, there are discussion groups within it. And if the broadband or the Wi-Fi is not strong enough, it can be, you can switch the video off. It's an incredibly immersive experience into legal, practical legal training. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, it does. Thank you very much for throwing more light. So these are opportunities that Nigerian lawyers can also use to improve themselves so that they can position for international business opportunities. Thank you so much for creating that platform and for making it accessible to all. So we encourage everyone after this webinar to check out their website and look out for some of those courses that we can take in order to improve ourselves so that we can position ourselves for international business opportunities. Now I go to Scott. Before we round up, we'd like you to give us a summary of your major points and your advice to Nigerian legal practitioners.
Okay, first and foremost, thank you again for hosting Tom and myself today. It's been exceedingly exciting. It's been, some great questions from some very good friends. Mentioned Prince again. So look, just in summary, look, we're in this together, and the most important thing is access and community. And we, as Africa Legal, have built the first Pan-African legal community, and it's growing all the time. Nigeria and the lawyers within Nigeria are such an important part, and we are every day driving to deliver more and more content to you, and education, because I think there is such an opportunity for you to access education through line. But going back to the topic of today, personal branding, and again, referring back to January in session 1, is such an important thing. Just immerse yourself in whatever you want to do. Be like a sponge. Take as much information as you can. You can't do enough reading. You can't do enough training. You can't do enough podcasts. You can't do enough conferences like this. Every time we're learning something and taking away something from the day. And God willing, we'll all get there. But Africa Legal's here. We're here to help you. We are here to develop the continent. We're here to bring you the international, the global law and access to global law into one place. And trust me on this. Together we will get there, and they will give you so much more training that otherwise would be difficult to reach. And that is one of the passions from myself and the team.
Thank you once again, Scott. Before I go to Tom, I just discovered that we skipped one of the questions. I don't know how I didn't allow my mind to it. By one question by Paul Mbweoma about aviation-related issue. I don't know whether we saw it. Good afternoon, sir. Please, can we have your thoughts on how the aviation industry in Africa can navigate the deluge of requests for refund of unused airfares by customers in light of the difficulties being faced by the aviation industry as a result of the pervading COVID-19 pandemic? I think we skipped this. I'm not sure we attended to it. Maybe you just have your thoughts on that before then Tom will now give us his final words.
I think one of our learned friends might be in a better place than than me. My English law is rusty, let alone my Nigerian consumer rights law. So I think that's one that I'm going to have to swerve. But look, we've got a good community of expert lawyers here together. So why don't you post that more publicly on the Legal Business Network forums, and we can see whether we can have someone who's far better qualified than I to have a swing at that one.
And also adding to what Tom was saying, Ife, Paul, thank you so much for that question. Again, I'm not really educated enough in terms of the Nigerian legal system to answer that. But what I will do, Paul, I will type an answer back to you with my email. Please do email me directly, and I will put you in touch with someone who can answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So we'll connect with Paul later on. And Paul, you can also connect with Scott on LinkedIn and continue the conversation from there. So before we round up, I'd like Tom to give us a summary of your key points and final words for Nigerian legal practitioners.
Yeah, well, to echo all of Scott's sentiments and my own personal thanks to you, Ife, and to everyone who's tuned in today. It's been really enjoyable, and I'm sure I speak for Scott in saying we'd love to be invited back to talk to you all again. I'm going to focus just very briefly on the international topic that we had today. My major takeaway here is it's there. You can start making progress towards internationalizing yourself and your practice now, whether it's through places like Africa Legal, taking training, expanding your horizons, just altering your thought processes a bit differently, or whether it is actively and relatively aggressively pursuing the international work, doing things like researching on Crunchbase about that next up and coming company. We've got a client, a Ugandan law firm called Bytelex. They are a 4-partner, if not smaller, law firm. Now, they were actually able to secure Zipline as an exclusive retainer very early in Zipline's emergence as a potential unicorn. Now, Zipline, if you guys aren't aware, is the drone delivery service, which is actually already delivering medicines to some of the most hardest to reach places on the continent. Now, this wasn't Clifford Chance or Adelshaw Goddard or Templars who secured that work. This was a very small, and even at the time, it might have been a 2-partner Ugandan law firm who were able to secure the exclusive retainment for legal services from Zipline. Okay, so the opportunity is there. I don't have a step-by-step case study of how to do it, but Google Bytelex advocates are a fantastic group of people. Raymond Asimwe, their managing partner, is a good friend of mine, and that's just a case in point. You know, it's there. Research, ask questions, come join us with the Africa Legal community, and we're all in it together to try and find those international opportunities and ensure that we all get the right fair share and spread our legal expertise to markets where they're most needed, rather than that advice just being sought from those that are the largest or most developed. So I say go get them. That's my key takeaway.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom and Scott, for this wonderful opportunity and for joining us from outside the jurisdiction, for sharing an international perspective in the business of law. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Thank you for sharing insights. In fact, we've learned so much from your presentations and discussions. We are so delighted to have you here, and my greetings on behalf of the Nigerian lawyers who are part of this session. We say a very big thank you to the Africa Legal team for facilitating this session, for being here, and for delivering value. Thank you so much.
I'll make sure I send you those slides so that we can have those hosted wherever you need to as well, so people can access them at their leisure.
All right. Thank you very much. We are very grateful. Thank you so much for being
here.
And thank you. And a very special thanks to all our participants, especially those who have been on from the first day till now. And I believe we have all learned a great lesson, and we also want to get some feedbacks via social media handles on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. Let us know if you learned anything and if that has added value to your life. We would like to get feedback from everyone. Thank you, and
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Tom, once again.
Take care, everybody.
Now, yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye all. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you all.